Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I interview a world-class expert on talent and recruiting so that you can build a company filled with rock stars. And I certainly have one for you today. Oak Street Health is based in Chicago, one of the city's fastest growing companies, has now penetrated most of the Midwest, heading to the East Coast. It's a fascinating business, one of the fastest growing companies, now with 1,500 people. Somehow, I was lucky enough to bag a great guest, the manager of talent at Oak Street Health, Rachel Ohlsson. Now, Rachel leads a team of people that somehow keep up with 40, 50, 100 openings at a time. So you think you have recruiting challenges, I can assure you that Rachel has it harder. And in the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk with Rachel about something she's super passionate about, something I'm passionate about, and I think you're probably not doing, which is delivering an experience in the interview that has the candidate coming away feeling super pumped about your company. They actually want to work at your company. And I know that doesn't sound important. You may say, well, it's interviewing. It's my responsibility and it's for me. It's not. When you're at a 3.7% job market or unemployment market, every touch point you are selling, and that includes the interview. It's a great opportunity to differentiate yourself because I've been in thousands, tens of thousands of interviews, and I can tell you most of them stink from the candidate perspective. So it's a huge opportunity for you to differentiate yourself in your business. And so with that, I'm happy to welcome Rachel Ohlsson, Manager of Talent at Oak Street Health. How are you, Rachel?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very excited because, like you, I'm very passionate about this, and I think most companies screwed up. Wouldn't you agree?
Definitely. I think it just needs, some focus and some training, and you can get there.
I like that you said in the pre-interview that you train your hiring managers, 1,500 people. You probably have, 1,000 hiring managers or something. You train them on how to do this because you don't naturally know how to do this because most people haven't learned how to do this along the way. They've been a candidate, they've been an interviewer, but they probably didn't learn this skill, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think a lot of people have what I would call an old school mentality about interviewing, where they very much put the candidate on the stand almost.
Like a witness stand, like Law and Order, right?
Exactly. And that's really what we try to untrain. And then we want to train them on giving an experience to the candidate that really makes them say, wow, I want to work there.
I love it. Wow. So before we go into it, let's just give the listeners a little bit of context. 30 seconds on Oak Street Health and what the business actually is.
Yeah, so Oak Street Health is a network of primary care centers focused specifically on adults with Medicare. And what we're doing here is we're actually delivering an entirely different model of healthcare that's based on providing value to our patients instead of volume of services. So what that basically means is that we hold ourselves accountable for our patients' health by taking on the risk and cost of their care.
So it's not an urgent care clinic. You're actually serving as their primary doctor?
Yes, we are their primary care physicians.
Okay.
And our whole goal is actually making the patient truly healthier, mind, body, and soul. And everything we do really is to make sure that we're looking at social determinants of health. We visit people's homes. Are there slipping hazards? Can we connect them with a food pantry, et cetera? Anything that they need to make sure that they're getting healthier and not using the ER as their primary care doctor.
Which costs a ton of money if you do that.
Exactly.
So I'm assuming you're recruiting executives, you're recruiting medical healthcare professionals, you're recruiting salespeople, all kinds of functions and all kinds of levels, right?
Everything in between, yes. I mean, everything from our front desk associates to our chief marketing officer.
Right. So this discussion around the WOW interview really applies very generically across the board.
Across the board, yes.
So one last thing before we go into the WOW interview. There was a phrase on your LinkedIn profile that caught my eye that I don't see often. And I just would love 30 seconds of color if you'd be willing to share. Mm-hmm. And that is that you actively hunt top candidates. Mm-hmm. Meaning you don't just post on a job board, you actively go after them. Can you just tell people how you do that? Because I've done many episodes on it and a lot of people still don't get it.
Definitely. I mean, it's really reaching out and giving that personal touch. So we reach out in a couple different ways. We actually use, and this is not a plug, but we use Career Builder Edge,
Yep.
which aggregates all social media platforms onto one easy to use site. So I can, put in keywords there, find the candidates I'm looking for.
Yep.
And then if there is an accessible email or phone number, they'll give it to me. If not, a LinkedIn message, still tried and true, is really the best route. And I really avoid doing mass messaging. I actually review the person's LinkedIn profile, and I put points about their profile in those messages to let them know, hey, I really am interested in you.
Yeah.
Not just someone who has all of your characteristics, but I sought you specifically out, and here is why.
You get a much better response rate, and it's just a great way to start the discussion. But to be fair, it's time consuming.
It is very time consuming. So we actively hunt really kind of our top level executives. That's really where we see the highest ROI. And the rest of our positions, luckily, Oak Street has enough kind of notoriety now where we can post and we get a pretty good response rate from doing that.
Got it. Okay, awesome. So now you've filled your funnel. You've got candidates, both active, passive, sales, executives, medical, whatever. Let's spend the next 15 minutes really drilling into this wow interview. Let's start with the non-wow interview, which is probably what our listeners are doing today. So give some color on what that looks like. So what do you find, Rachel, that most of your hiring managers are doing before you train them on this methodology?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first and foremost, some interesting stats, 70% of interviewees believe that an interview process is a peek inside how a company operates as a whole.
70%.
70%. Yes, that's from HR Magazine.
Yep.
That is really something that you have. If you don't take anything else away from this, please take that away from it, because if you have hiring managers that are not engaged, they're on their phones, they're on their computers, they're not paying attention, you have a process that's not organized, that's going to be a reflection of your entire company, not just that hiring manager.
And so let's be specific on why you should care. Why you should care is that means your acceptance rate is going to be lower, right? The average job acceptance rate right now, believe it or not, is only 2/3 average. So you make 3 offers, only 2 are accepted. You can't afford to lose candidates in this kind of market. And I think what you're saying is a crappy interview experience, you're going to lose great candidates.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's definitely, all of the candidates we're speaking to are interviewing at other places. And I think that's something that all hiring managers should keep in mind as well, is that they are not just talking to you.
Right.
Even if they tell you they are, they're probably not.
Right.
We want to keep that in mind. And so, yeah, I would say a crappy experience would be coming in, not having someone paying attention to the time I took out of my day to come in here. I might have taken off work. I might have had to get through, minus 20-degree weather to get here.
Yeah.
It's being really respectful of the person's time is really first and foremost.
You gave some great examples. I'll add a few, if that's okay. Interviewers that are not prepared, they haven't even looked at the resume. They don't even know who they're meeting. They're late. Yeah. They don't take notes, which means they don't look interested, or they take too many notes, in which case there's no eye contact or connection. They don't give the candidate a chance to ask questions. The interview is too long or too short. I mean, it's endless, right?
Yeah.
It's so easy to have the candidate walk out saying, that sucked.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think a huge one is asking the same questions over and over. So at Oak Street, what in general, how many interviews might I have before I get an offer to work there?
Yeah, so that was something I really had to wrangle in when I came to Oak Street. We definitely were of the opinion that we wanted you to meet everybody, which I understand. We're a very collaborative culture, but we've really pared it down to 2 to 3.
Great.
2 being the ideal best practice.
Right.
3 being something we don't recommend, but we understand if you really can't make a decision here.
And just so I'm clear, you're talking about one-on-one interviews, not a panel or group interview.
One-on-one interviews. Yeah, we max it to 2.
Great. Panel interviews have been proven to be less predictive and accurate than one-on-one interviews. I have known clients and companies that have 5, 10, 15, 18 people interviewing candidates. which of course is annoying. Takes the process forever, which means you're going to lose candidates because the other companies are moving faster.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't it super annoying because all these interviewers are asking the same questions?
Exactly. They're asking the same questions. It also, when you have up to 18 people interviewing someone, definitely you're going to feel like you're on the stand at that point as well, right? And you're probably not going to be your true authentic self. You're going to be very defensive. And again, it's just going to make you nervous. And what we're really trying to discover in the interview process is who this person truly is, not just what their resume says and what their skills are. We're trying to identify a good culture fit. And to identify a good culture fit, we need the person to feel at ease and really let us get to know them.
Great. Okay. So now let's talk about the wow interviews. So let's say I know nothing about how to do a wow interview or a wow experience. I'm sure there's a million things. Let's focus our next 10 minutes on the key things, right? The few things that you think really make the difference.
Definitely. Sorry.
Nope. Let's pick one and start with it.
I would say it's really simple. First and foremost, greeting the person when they come in. If you're not able to, having a front desk person, let them know, hey, they're running a little bit behind. Please take a seat. Can I get you something to drink? A lot of people don't even realize how nice that is, just offering them something to drink.
Now, do you mean like a Cabernet or vodka tonic or?
A water.
Or water. Oh, okay.
Definitely want to keep it sober.
Got it. Although, don't interview over a meal or a drink, right? I don't know how you feel about that, but I hate interviewing people over meals and drinks.
I agree. I think it should be a formal process. I think people appreciate when it's a formal process because, again, that shows that your company is operating at the level that it should, at a business professional level.
Got it.
If you're doing something over drinks, over dinner, you're really sending a message that we're really casual. We don't really follow, traditional rules here. I guess if that's the message you want to send, you can, but I would not recommend it.
What I've talked about a lot on this show and in my book is the fact that the first 60 seconds, most people make their initial opinion of the candidate, and we forget the first 60 seconds. They make their opinion of us too. So what you're talking about, Rachel, in terms of getting them situated and oriented and reducing their nerves, because every candidate is nervous to some extent. The adrenaline is pumping. The more you can get them at ease, the more you can see the authentic person versus seeing the candidate. And that's going to lead to better decision-making on your part, right?
That's exactly right. Yes. You want to make sure that they are actually showing you who they are. That's the point of what we're doing here. That's the point of interviewing. That's the point of getting different perspectives. That's the point of really this whole entire process, is to try to get to know an entire individual in the shortest amount of time possible.
So while we're on that topic, what in your experience is that optimal amount of time? How long are the interviews at Oak Street Health?
So it depends on the level of interview. If we're interviewing, let's say, a front desk associate, we actually do 30-minute interviews.
Okay.
I think that's a perfect amount of time. We do 5 to 6 questions, and then allow for some time at the end for their questions.
Yep.
When we have somebody at a little higher level, we will do 45 minutes up to an hour. If we have someone, let's say like a C-suite executive, an hour per person. Because again, we really want to make sure that they have the time that they can answer a lot of their questions. In my experience, the higher, level the role, the more in-depth questions the candidate will have as well.
Sure. They have more sophistication, more at stake in making this decision to join. So we've got them in the room. They're situated. They're calm. They are well hydrated. Mm-hmm. We are on time. What's the next thing?
The next thing is closing your laptop and turning your phone over. That's one of the biggest things that I tell my managers here. I understand we're all busy. We're all being constantly reached out to, but we want to make sure that we are not being rude. And it is rude to have your phone constantly going off, or, you're getting G chats, during the interview. So definitely closing the laptop, turning that phone over, and then having their resume ready, and your hiring manager interview guide ready as well.
So before we go to that, because I don't want to skip through that. Mm-hmm. This part about the phone and the computer sounds so obvious. I'm sure the listener's saying, duh. 99% of the time that's not happening. And it is a huge way for you to differentiate yourself versus other companies or interviewers that your candidate is interviewing at. If you just do this one thing that you're saying, which is set aside your phone for an hour. And if you can't do that, then hiring is not your biggest priority, in which case I don't know how to help you.
That's exactly right. I couldn't have said it any better. It's such a small gesture, but it means so much to the candidate that they're getting your full attention and that you're really here and being respectful of their time.
Right. I agree. I've had to tell candidates to turn their phone off too. It cuts both ways.
It definitely does. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now you mentioned having their resume, having the interview guide. So what I assume what that means is all of your interviewers, all of your hiring managers have a list of questions in front of them actually printed out. Is that what I'm to understand?
Yes, we provide them with a interview that already has a list of pre-approved behavioral interview questions that we want them to ask. And of course, we want them to ask every candidate the same question every time.
Love
So
it.
they have to this guide. And
Great.
they also are provided with the person's resume. I recommend printing it out again as a gesture of, I do know who you are. I did read your resume.
Yeah.
And I am prepared for this interview.
I like the idea of it being on paper because if it's on the computer, I don't know if you're on the computer Skyping or texting or whatever versus looking at my resume.
Exactly.
So it's fascinating. So you've got a list of questions and the listener may be saying, well, I've been interviewing for 20 years. I know what questions to ask. I'm okay winging it. How can you, what can you share for our listeners to help them understand that that's not a wow experience to the candidate when the interviewer is winging it and making up questions on the spot?
Yeah, definitely. This is kind of the number one question I get from my hiring managers as well. And what I say to them is this: listen, we're all human, right? And we're all subject to our human memories, and how those are not perfect. So writing down the questions, and maybe you say, okay, I know what questions I want to ask. We'll write those down. I'm, if you don't want to ask the questions that I have provided, let's work together and write down the questions that you want to ask.
So you don't just, you're not the interview question Nazi. You're okay involving them in the process. The key is they know ahead of time what they're going to ask, and they ask the same questions to every candidate so that when it comes time to score candidates, you have a basis of comparison.
That's exactly right. If you're asking different questions for each candidate, there is no way to properly score them on the same playing field because you've asked them all different questions.
I love it. Which leads to bad decision making.
Exactly.
Okay. Next, what else? So I'm well prepared. I know what I'm asking. What else? What are the other key components of a wow interview versus a crappy interview?
Another key component that I really punch out with my hiring managers is to make sure you spend the entire time with them. Just like you said, some of us can tell within the first 60 seconds whether or not we like this person, right? What I ask my interviewers is to try to prove whatever that first 60-second decision was, try to prove that wrong. Yeah. Let's say in the first 60 seconds, you're like, yes, I want to hire this person.
Right.
Try to prove yourself wrong. And in the opposite way as well. I don't want to hire this person. I'd like to leave now. I'm busy. Let me wrap this up in 10 minutes. That's not okay. We want to make sure that we're allowing everybody to answer all of the same questions because people can change your mind. It's happened to me many times where I have been in an interview in the first 5 seconds and said, no, I am not hiring this person. And they changed my mind by the end of it because I stuck through it and I asked them all of the questions. And one of those questions, 5 questions down, they actually really shine.
Yeah. It's hard to do that, isn't it? Because you're halfway in, you're like, oh my God, this is a half hour of my life I'll never get back. I've already decided she's not the one. Mm-hmm. It's like when you end a date early. It's like, let's go. Let's get out of here.
Exactly.
And what you're saying is that premature judgment could be wrong and you could be walking away from great candidates.
That's exactly right. And also this isn't a date. This is something that you need to understand as part of marketing for your corporation.
Right.
This is a branding
yeah.
effort that you're doing.
Yeah.
And doing a interview early is not good branding for you.
So let's talk about that for a minute since you bring up branding in the couple minutes we have remaining. So my understanding is that at least the research shows that Glassdoor is now the very first place that candidates go. Mm-hmm. To research a company. And I don't know if listeners know this, but if you haven't looked at Glassdoor in a while, you can research a company and what it's like to work there, but you can also separately research what it's like to interview there.
Exactly right.
And so can you give even one example, no names mentioned, of a posting or something that based on a great interview or a crappy interview or a wow interview that you think made a difference? What are people posting? What are candidates looking at on Glassdoor that is important to know?
Yeah, so what we have seen people post on our Glassdoor specifically is the exact questions we ask, which is fine with me, I guess. But also, one of the things I've noticed is they are posting about the amount of interviews that they're put through. Again,
Okay.
being respectful of
So
their
they're
time.
paying attention to how many people they see.
They're paying attention to how many people they're seeing and also how many times they're being asked to come into your organization.
Right.
If it's
Literally how many trips?
literally how many trips they had to make. And
Got
then
it.
another thing I see is how long it took to hear back, even if it was just a question. Waiting more than 2 weeks is very upsetting to
Right.
folks. It
So
needs to be 5
so
minutes.
this is huge. This is huge. This is part of the wow experience, which is the after the interview.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
So what do you quote unquote mandate with your hiring managers in terms of them getting a decision or at least an update, or at least we don't know yet, but we haven't forgotten about you? What is the policy, if you will, at Oak Street?
We require that within 24 hours to have some feedback, even if it is just like you said, hey, we still want to see other candidates, we're not sure, etc. That's at least something that we can tell our candidate. The silence is not acceptable. You definitely need to follow up and let them know where they stand, and that includes rejecting them in a timely manner as well. A lot of people get nervous about rejecting folks and they feel bad about doing it. And in fact, it's the opposite. It is, again, respectful of their time and the other processes that they might be going through to
Right.
let them know sooner rather than later, hey, we are not going to be moving forward. We wish you the best of luck, etc.
So everything you said made sense. Must be a little tough to call a candidate or email a candidate and say, we're not sure about you. We want to keep seeing other people. How does that provide a wow experience? Yes, I get it that you can updated me, but you kind of told me I'm not good enough. Like, why don't I go away saying, well, then screw you?
Yeah, we definitely don't follow up with we're a maybe on you. How we frame it is, thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate the time it took you to interview with us. However, we are still interviewing and we do want to see all qualified candidates.
Got it. So it's not, we're not sure about you. It's, we need to complete the process.
We need to complete the process because we want to complete a fair and compliant process. And in order to do that, we do need to interview all qualified candidates. That's how we frame it.
Yeah. We have time for one more. So give us your wildest or craziest or most controversial piece of advice on what you've learned about providing a wow interview experience.
Oh, the most controversial.
The one you get the most pushback from your hiring managers. They think you're nuts.
I do get a lot of pushback about asking the same questions every time. I think
so then let's talk about that before we wrap. So why is that? Is it because your interviewers want to be creative, or is it because they want to take the interview wherever it goes, or why are they pushing back?
Most of the time they push back is because they see something on the resume that they specifically want to ask about.
Got it.
Right. And I understand that. And I think that makes sense. And I think that if you have time after you have asked all of the questions, that is something you can come back and say, hey, I noticed here there was a gap in your employment. Can you walk me through that?
Yeah.
That's the biggest concern they have with following this prescriptive list is that, well, what if there's something specific I'm concerned about?
Right. Well, then you should talk about it, but you need to at least cover these basics.
Exactly. And that's what I say. Mm-hmm.
And then that's in addition, right?
It's in addition if you have time. Yes.
Rachel, I'm really impressed because most interviews suck. I mean, there's just no way to sugarcoat it. And I think so many people say, well, the interview is for me. The purpose is not to entertain the candidate. And I would say, yeah, it's not entertainment, but they're going away feeling something. And it would be a lost opportunity for them not to go away saying, wow, these guys are professional. These folks know what they're doing. They take talent seriously. I got a fair hearing. Even if they say no, they handled it with class. Mm-hmm. And then they go right to Glassdoor and post it, right?
Exactly.
So you might as well get it right. So I give you a lot of credit. Congratulations. Really great stuff. how can people learn more about Oak Street or get in touch with you, Rachel?
Definitely. I mean, you can always visit our website, oakstreethealth.com, or, please reach directly out to me. I am happy to help or provide any tips and tricks. My email is my first and last name, rachel.ohlsson@oakstreethealth.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing these ideas, Rachel. They're super important.
Thank you, Jeff, for having me. Really enjoyed the time.